So it's Tuesday the 15th of March 2016 and the news has just been on. It's coming up for 20 past 10 at night. So the news has just been on and the government is apparently, the Tory government is going to make all schools into academies. So they're just going to rule on it and just change things so that it just becomes the case, because they probably hoped they'd all go and volunteer to become academies just because there was money in it, because effectively you were going to get more money if you became an academy. Of course, teachers aren't that daft, and head teachers certainly aren't, and they weren't going to run towards it unless overall the whole scheme looked as though it had something for the pupils, the students, and yeah, for them too, I suppose. And of course they've realised what's what. They knew that something was going to happen, and there's something that teachers knew was going to happen, was if there was a critical mass reached where academies, sufficient numbers of schools became academies, see, it takes them out of certain things. It takes you out of the local authority control, it takes you out of the national curriculum, and it takes you out of the teacher pay settlements on a national scale, on a national level. Yeah. So the national pay scale for teachers out the window. The fact that this is going to be announced by the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I'm a little bit ahead because it's, like I say, it's Tuesday. Tomorrow's his budget, Wednesday the 16th. So, you know, he's going to give the news. The fact that it's the Chancellor of the Exchequer that he's going to give the news tells you everything that you need to know. This is not the education person, the Minister for Education or the Secretary of State for Education that's going to give the news. This is the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So it's about money. It's not complicated. If he's giving you the news, it's about money. So they're all going to change their academies whether they like it or not, unless, of course, there's a crunch like there has been with the doctors. Now, it's unfortunate. I'm sure George Osborne was hoping that the icebreaker called Jeremy Hunt would come piling through as the Secretary of State for Health and force doctors to accept a pay deal, and that'd be that. I'm quite sure this was scheduled. And in the wake of that crunch having happened and icebreaker Jeremy Hunt having, you know, trailblazed the way, rolling over the junior doctors, which of course hasn't happened, and with massive public support it probably won't happen. I mean, I'm not sure how it's going to pan out if he does it. So in the wake of that, I think that the idea was perhaps that the Education Secretary would announce this. Now, the fact that it's the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the fact that the Tories would rather cover up it's all to do with money suggests to me one thing, that possibly the person who's doing education at the minute, they don't expect to be there for very much longer. So maybe that person is dealing with another big thing at the minute, the EU, and maybe that person is not for the government's point of view, i.e. maybe the Secretary of State for Education at the moment doesn't want Britain to remain in the EU. So that would explain why somebody else, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, has taken over the announcement. Because of course it hadn't publicity to the alternative point of view on the EU question, just because somebody had to announce this. So that would fit. And of course they're talking about swapping people out or supporting the EU removal of Britain from the EU. So anyway, so teachers knew it was coming, you see, which is that national pay scales would be scrapped if the number of schools reach critical mass. And that is obviously what will happen if you make them all go down the road of effectively a sort of privatisation called academy. There'll be no need in some ways. You don't need it. I mean, you might say a wise man would keep it, or woman would keep it, but you don't need national pay scales, I suppose. So they'll just scrap them. If it's about money, then it's about saving money. I'll give you a brief example of what does happen though, and first I'll start with evidence. There's no evidence whatsoever that educationally there's any point in doing this. I'll repeat that. There is no evidence of any sort, there is no evidential basis for changing the schools in this country to academies based on academic performance. Nothing. Right? They just want to do it out of ideology. In other words, they just want it. It's like a parent saying, oh, I want a two-seater sports car. I mean, it might not suit their needs, but they just like it that way. Okay? And then they put up with all the trouble that comes afterwards. Except, of course, the elite that run the country won't be putting up with the trouble because they all go to private schools anyway. So, they're going to make them all academies. So what? It's a financial point, nothing to do with education standards or helping kids get on. It's got nothing to do with any of that. It's just finance. And the dangers in losing the national curriculum are massive, educationally. How do you control standards? I have no idea. The dangers of going out of local authority control, I'll tell you what that means. Pull them away from local authority control and you can then cheapen up, you can reduce the amount of money that comes to local authorities. And then the teachers' national pay scales going, again, that's just a financial thing. And all the changes, there's nothing to do with education in this. Nothing to do with beneficial education. It's ideology, obsession, and we just frickin' feel like it. Thanks for watching and listening.